Okay, so hopefully you went on to the next video, and let's go ahead and continue with 1e. So we said that we're going to go ahead and keep it as cosine because that's what we like anyways. So now the only thing you have to do is just go ahead and convert 11 pi over 6 into degrees. So I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to convert that into degrees for me right quick and tell me what you get. Alright, did everyone get 330 degrees? Very good. That's exactly what you should get. Everyone by now should be feeling comfortable with going from radians to degrees, degrees from radians, converting. So now what we need to do is we need to figure out where 330 is. And if you remember, that is going to be right here in the fourth quadrant. So let's go ahead and create our triangle. Remember, the outside legs were our opposites. On the x-axis was the adjacent leg, and inside was the hypotenuse. Now, we need to figure out what is that reference triangle. So, if we say that from here to here is 330 degrees, how do I find this small piece right here? Remember, in order for you to find it, that is 360 degrees minus 330 degrees, and that will give you your reference angle. So in this case, it's going to be 30 degrees. Okay, so this piece right here is going to be 30 degrees. Now, if this is 30, this right here obviously must be 60. So, directly across from the 60 is going to be your radical 3. Across from your 30, this is going to be 1, but more specifically, it's going to be negative 1. And then this one's going to be your hypotenuse, which will be 2. So, what trig are we doing in this case? We're doing cosine, so cosine is SOHCAHTOA, so that's going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. From there, all we need to do is just fill it in. Adjacent is radical 3, and hypotenuse is 2. So your answer for this one is radical 3 over 2. Okay, so we have officially finished all of 1. Let's go on and continue and do number 3 and 4. And hopefully I'll get time to do number 5 with you. And we'll probably come back on Wednesday and do the rest. Okay, so I'm going to do number 3 with you. So let's take a quick look at number 3. Number 3 is right there. H of x is equal to negative 1 plus 2 cosine of 1/3 times x plus pi over 3. So let me go ahead and write that one down right quick. H of x is equal to negative 1 plus 2 cosine 1/3 plus pi over 3. Alright, so what I'm going to do is right underneath that, I'm going to write the generic equation, which was vertical shift plus or minus, in this case I'm going to say plus, a sine or cosine, in this case I'm going to say cosine because that's what we have up there, in and then we had x minus hs. Okay, so if you have to, you can go ahead and circle, because this one lines up. Remember, your vertical shift is always the number that is alone, by itself. Your amplitude is always positive, and it's always in front of your trig. The n helps you find your period. The x always has to have a coefficient of 1, and you always got to think opposite for horizontal shift. The reason why you got to think opposite is because of that minus. That's exactly what a minus is. It's the opposite of something. So let's figure it out. Let's answer those questions. A is asking for the period. Well, the formula to get the period is P equals 2 pi over n. In this case, it's going to be 2 pi over what? What is n in this problem? It's 1/3, exactly. Now, again, what is this method? You're going to get tired of me saying or asking you this. What is that method? That method is copy, change, flip. So I'm going to copy the 2 pi, change my division to a multiplication, and now I'm going to flip that 1/3, and it will now become 3/1. If this bothers you that it's not a fraction, you can make it into a fraction by just putting it over 1. So you have 2 pi, top times top, so 2 pi times 3. That's going to be 6 pi over bottom times bottom. What's 1 times 1? 1, and that's just really 6 pi. So your period for this one is 6 pi. Now, B is asking for the amplitude. That's very good because amplitude is easy. Amplitude is always positive. At the moment, it is positive. Excuse me. It is positive, so it's just going to be 2. Now, C was the one that I changed for you. I changed instructions for it. So C, I want the horizontal shift. Remember, horizontal shift, we're going to think of the opposite. So just go ahead and take the opposite right now. Remember, horizontal shift moves either left or right. Left if it's negative, right if it's positive. So if we take this, at the moment it's positive, but when we think the opposite, it's going to be negative. So negative pi over 3. Now, if you remember, a negative will go either left or to the right, depending on the sign. In this case, my sign is negative, so that means I'm going to go to the left. Now let's look at vertical shift. Remember that the vertical shift is always the number that is alone. So here's the vertical shift, and it moves it either up or down. Up if it's positive, down if it's negative. In this case, my vertical shift is -1. That means that I'm going to be moving down. And that is my answer. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to number 4. F of x equals 4 sine of x plus 2. Okay, so it looks like this one right here. It's this one right here. F of x equals 4 times sine of x plus 2. So let's go ahead and get that one started. And 2, 3, and 4 is exactly what your quiz this Friday will cover. Just label it for me. This should be an easy grade for you all. So it would. I'm doing this in order to help you boost your average. 4 sine of x plus 2. Okay, the first thing you need to do is just check to see if x has a coefficient of 1. Does it? It does. So in this case, you don't need to factor anything at all. But you realize there is no number that stands off by itself, and I told you, I believe on Friday, that you can easily change that by just adding a 0 to it, because you're not going to change your problem at all. So in this case, if you rewrite it, it's going to be a sine n x minus hs plus vs. Notice that this time your vertical shift is at the end. So if you connect each one, that seems like that's going to be your amplitude. This right here is going to be your n. There's an imaginary one right there, even though you don't see it. Here's your vertical shift. I mean horizontal shift, I'm sorry. And then here's your vertical shift. Alright, so let's get it together. Period is equal to 2 pi over n. So you have that 2 pi over, what is n in this case? You don't see it, but there's an imaginary 1, so 2 pi over 1, or in this case, just 2 pi. So remember, the reason why we want our coefficient to be 1 majority of the times, if it is, that means you know that your period automatically will be 2 pi. So this is A, 2 pi. Okay, let's look at B. B is asking for the amplitude, so I have A is equal to, in this case amplitude is positive, so we don't need to take the absolute value, so A is equal to 4. Okay, let's look at C. C is asking for the horizontal shift. When it's inside, we got to think the opposite, so what's the opposite of a 2? A positive 2, the opposite of a positive 2 is a negative 2. And remember, it's moving it either left or right. In this case, it's negative, so it's going to be moving it to the left. And then, of course, your vertical shift is easy because it's what? It's 0. You have none. And that's your answer. This is exactly what 2, 3, and 4 will consist of on your quiz for Friday. Very easy quiz, should be an average booster for you. Alright, let's look at number 5 right quick. So if we look at it, it says write an equation that represents the curve. Both 5 and 6, you can write them as either a sine or a cosine equation. I typically stay with sine. I just naturally gravitate to the sine one because I find it's a little bit easier for me to deal with instead of cosine. So I usually like to stick with sine. So what's going to happen is we're going to try to create an equation for it. So the first thing you need to figure out is which trig do you want to use. In this case, we decided we are going to use sine. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this paint out. And I'm going to do 5. Okay, so we said that our trig is going to be sine. Alright, and then what we need to do is we need to figure out where the middle of our wave is. So in this case, I'm going to work on here. If I were to draw a line right through the middle, right there. Do you agree that's the middle? And let me change it a different color for y'all. Let's see. If I can, because it's not letting me. Alright, there we go. That is the middle of it, right? So we want to know first the amplitude. In other words, how tall is it going to be? So if you look at the middle line, the symmetry line, how tall does it go? Let's see. 1, 2. So it's 2